segment. I know I put it at last, but I kind of want to create some space between the third segment. So I want to ask you, man, like, in your opinion, what made this show so special?
Oh, man. I mean, I've talked about it a lot before as far as, what it is that separated. Like when I've watched the first episode, I was like, all right, this is good. This is already kind of setting itself apart from like differences just as far as like what the first episode hits as far as its subject matter goes. And yeah, again, the show had its fair share of silly moments. And like you said, there were seasons that were better than others, obviously, like any sitcom does. But to me, and I said this before, the thing that sets this apart from other sitcoms is the fact that it just has that raw sense of heart, because this is an actual family, that we're focused around. This is not a workplace. This is not a group of friends. This is not a political satire. It's not a tech satire. It's not any of those. It's a family, and any good family show is going to have those emotional beats, especially since it's an immigrant family. So just as far as seeing kind of the differences between generations, as far as the actual immigrants versus the first generation kids, as far as all that went. And in addition to this being based off of a play, which already to me gives it a sense of legitimacy, I'll say, for lack of a better word, that I feel like a lot of other sitcoms don't have. It has a lot of those moments that I feel like a lot more people can relate to. In addition to the fact that, again, that it does focus on a sect that does not necessarily get a lot of focus, that being that Asians. I can't say Asian Americans because this is not an American show; it's a Canadian show. But again, the cast is predominantly Koreans, Indians. What are some of the, what's it called? Chinese people. They're like the cast is predominantly. So just from that sense alone, it's going to have a lot more of a fresh, original, unique take as far as all that goes. So just for all of those reasons alone, I feel like it gets a step above most other sitcoms. But it's also just a sense of where it's one of the first sitcoms where I feel like it actually puts its characters through growth, and not through kind of like that manipulative growth that makes it seem like the characters are growing, when in reality you're kind of just, rinsing and resetting each season that you can keep people around with the same set of characters. These characters do go through growth. These characters do go through shifts and major changes, The Kimchee that we're left with at the end of the season is not the Kimchee that we start with. The Appa that we get at the end of the show is not the Appa that we started with. The same goes for Umma, Janet, Jung, even Shannon to an extent, even though she's my least favorite character. All the characters that we go through actually do go through a lot of growth and change. And I think also that the show does is so much of the time, right, when sitcoms have to go quote unquote serious per se, it either feels overly sentimental, forced, or trying to get a message down your throat, and it feels like it always fails as far as that goes. But this was the first show that I've seen that actually was able to hit those emotional beats. Like the moments that I'll keep coming back to are the Jung Appa moments at the end of the first two seasons. First when Jung comes to visit Appa when he's in the hospital, and they have that, and even though Appa's high out of his mind on whatever drugs the doctors have put him on, it creates for like this really touching and emotional moment that I was not expecting. And then the end of season 2, when they have that beautiful moment in the bar, when they unexpectedly have that unexpected text chain, and they just have that great moment. Like those are the moments that like I personally just don't get from most of the sitcoms that I've watched. I can think of maybe 3 other sitcoms that I've watched in my entire life that have those moments, and this was the first sitcom that I'm like, okay, they've earned these moments, and that just like already steps it above like a majority of the other sitcoms that I've watched. So if I had to say one thing that this show has over other sitcoms, which again, the sitcom is, I've said, a style of TV show that I do not typically gravitate towards, I gotta say it's for those reasons.
Yeah, I hear that, man. I totally do. And I think sort of speaking to your whole sort of the representation aspect, I think even though it is the Canadian experience, our continent that we live on, North America, has been occupied for about 400 years now by like immigration, and there's more than just European voices that immigrated over here, and it's nice that we finally get to see some of that and how they've adjusted,
refreshing.
And how and how they've sort of been able to traverse the experience that we've all shared on this continent. And that's something that both of our countries, Canada and the United States, have shared. And so it's cool to see that and to get a different sort of palette on that sort of experience. It was refreshing. And I think it's, what I also think this show did its homework. I mean, it helps that Ins Choi is Korean himself, but you kind of get some smaller aspects of the Korean experience in there, like the whole Dongjin thing, where it's like Kimchee and Jung playing that prank on themselves at work, where it's sexual harassment, but the problem is the culture is not seeing it that way. So Korean, it's a harmless prank, but in the workplace, in a Western society, it's considered sexual harassment. And we have this beautiful clash of ideologies. And the way a sitcom's able to tackle that is so interesting, where I think, other shows try and tackle this type of thing and it just ends up being disrespectful to either to one or the other side, if not both. But the way that this show is able to sort of show like, hey, like we all have to learn how to live together because everyone brings their own unique experience to the table. And it's going to be a little messy, but it's going to be okay. Like, for all that, people preach in this industry, it's like they weren't even preaching and they hit the nail on the head with that one perfectly. And there's so many different examples of Appa sort of having to find his way through the changing landscape of our society. And they handle it always so perfectly because they give you the middle-aged perspective, they give you the immigrant perspective, they give you whoever he's talking to's perspective, and it's just always a respectful culmination that leads to a very enjoyable and enriching experience, which, I mean, it's strange how this show can be so deeply cultural and yet so take what you want from it at the same time. You don't need to get drowned in sort of those aspects, but if you want it, it's there and it's done in a way where it actually really is. Oh wow, I learned a little bit about that culture, man. I had no idea about that. And it's cool to me. Like, I think that's what happens when filmmakers and I guess playwrights as well in this situation really care about what they're writing. They take the time to do the research and they really bring that to the table. It made it feel authentic. And to someone like me who had no idea of like the Korean Canadian experience, I at least have a little taste now, and I at least it's on my radar, and that's cool because I think we need to be as accepting of everyone's voices as possible. And unless we give voices to shows like these, we're not going to know about it because we can't be in multiple places at once, right? And especially with COVID being locked down, only being able to go so far, it's like our filmmakers are going to be the ones to bring those different perspectives to us. And I'm glad this show actually did what so many have said they're going to do.
Yes.
And I think that's special in and of itself.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 110%. Like, it's one thing, right? Obviously, with dealing with Hollywood's never-ending sentence of hypocritical bullshit, but when you see a show that actually sticks to its guns and actually goes there and is able to accomplish it in a sitcom, which again it was what sitcoms used to do as far as kind of handling, those mundane little issues, while at the same time being so endearing with those characters. Again, like we've joked in the past about, kind of the previous Hollywoods regarding of like the disposable nature of television, when in reality television ended up touching so many more people on a personal level than, sometimes most movies do, So it's kind of interesting how, that kind of dichotomy has come, and I feel it come almost full circle within this show,
Yeah, no, totally, man. It's cool. It's cool when a little show like this kind of becomes a behemoth like it has. It's cool when a country that's not known for exporting big franchise worthy or zeitgeist worthy rather television series or productions has an export that is so huge and kind of makes you wonder, hey, like, we're paying attention to a different sort of, film community now, like we're welcoming in the Canadian film industry into our mainstream zeitgeist, and it's promising and it gives me hope for like what's on the horizon. It's cool when shows like Shits and Kim's can slowly start to put a whole new player being the CBC in the mix. And so
Yes.
I'm really excited, man, because, there's Bollywood that's been popping up and creating a lot of waves. The Korean film industry, South Korean film industry has been crushing it lately.
Yes.
And now Canadian film industry is another player. And it's really cool to see. Like, I think competition, I've always said this, competition in the marketplace is a great thing. And I'm glad we're finally getting it. It's because, hey, man, you American filmmakers, the bar has been raised. How can you up this show?
Yes,
And
indeed.
and by all means, you'll have resources to get it out there even bigger than Kim's did. You could be big out the gates because of the machine you have behind you. So let's see. That's what I would pose to those filmmakers. But
Yeah,
with
I
that
would
being
agree with
said,
that.
Dom, did you want to jump into the final topic?